Welcome, everyone. You are listening to the 4th episode of the 2nd season of No Quitting the Home Team. I'm Renee.
I'm Dave.
I'm Jesse.
I'm glad you've joined us today.
Today on the show, we're super excited because we're going to dive into a book that's going to be incredibly controversial and fun and
zesty.
And partially terrible. And I can't wait. I can't wait.
To eviscerate it?
Yeah, I cannot wait for this rating. But it's going to be super interesting and hopefully helpful to everyone listening. But before we get into that, Renee, how are you doing today? How's marriage treating you?
I would say good. Good.
I kind of got nervous. You kind of
feels like
a
the
long pause.
quiet there.
The pause.
I was feeling confident until the silence. So,
you know what? It's just kind of it's good, uneventful. It's more exciting to either share something really bad or really fantastic, and when it's good. Our kids started school this week, so it's been a really, really bananas week.
Yeah.
Schedule wise, but I feel like we're good.
Yeah.
That's such a vanilla answer.
Well, it's. I feel like we're good too.
Yeah, and my voice is returning to a normal octave.
I was gonna say you sound like Renee.
Yes, so I feel better, which is that's helpful.
Yeah, although it does, around our household, your low.
The
raspy
jokes
voice
no longer hit.
Was
the jokes
a lot
no
of
longer
fun for
hit.
us.
Yeah, it was.
We
It was.
really enjoyed your discomfort.
Yeah, you got to seize that opportunity.
Yeah, we did.
So now I can bark orders with more regularity
Without
frequency.
smoker voice comments.
That's right. What about you, Jesse? How are you?
Yeah, we're doing great. The biggest point of contention in our marriage right now, which isn't actually a point of contention, our 2-year-old has never had a haircut.
Never
Never had a haircut.
Wow.
We just let that blonde that
locks.
wave flow. We just let it.
A la
we let
Tarzan.
it ride. Yeah. And I think the listeners will understand what I mean when I say this, but he is, in fact, a long-haired boy. He's not just a boy with long hair, but like his attitude, his personality, he's just kind of a wild dude. And so we have known for a while that the long hair wouldn't last. And I've been dreading the haircut because I would just never cut it if it were up to me. But it gets in his eyes, and he's 2. He has no real resources for dealing with that. So
First time you get a bunch of food in there.
Oh yeah. Oh, when he gets sick.
No.
Does it get crusted to his nose?
Because he
man.
sleeps and it's on his face.
Yeah.
Anyway, you're welcome, everyone, for that mental image. Today he got his first haircut.
No way.
And my wife has been dreading this because I feel like she felt she was in a no-win situation.
Wait, did you take him somewhere or did she cut it?
No, she took him somewhere this morning.
Okay.
And I think she felt she was in a no-win situation because if she cut too much of it off, she knew that I would be upset and sad because I love his long hair. And if she didn't cut it, that she would be upset because, it would still be in his face all the time and whatever. Anyway, we found a nice, very healthy middle ground. It's out of his face. It's still long, and he still looks like himself. So it's very cute. Everybody survived the haircut.
Crisis averted.
Crisis averted. And I teased her because I was like, this isn't an actual thing. I know that I love his long hair, but he's going to have to get a haircut at some point.
Yes.
It's going to be okay. I'll be fine. But I think she wanted to be doubly sure that I wasn't going to, sleep on the couch for a week.
So be honest, did you tell her to save a lock?
No, we've never done that.
Oh, you haven't?
That's not I don't know.
You don't have locks.
Feels
What about if
creepy.
you save your children's teeth?
She may have.
We have a box of
There's a
human
box
teeth in our house.
in my sock drawer of just teeth.
This is another conversation for another day. We may need to bring back the what's weird about us category.
It's true. It's true.
Yeah,
the teeth
email.
do rot. They
Yeah.
continue to rot a little
Yeah.
bit.
Yeah.
Go ahead and.
But then throw away your child's DNA. It's like, here, let's just chunk these teeth.
Yeah, you do
What
that
if
every
they
time you
need
throw
'em?
away a Band-Aid.
What if they need them?
Do you save
They
every
need their
Band-Aid?
teeth?
What are you
know.
talking about?
I don't know. What if you could harvest the calcium from them or something?
This
Or
is
they-
getting real weird.
Yeah. Yeah, let's try. We're
No, we're
I
keeping
thought
it.
you were going to go into like jewelry.
Oh,
Like,
I'm not going to put
Yeah,
one. I'm
where
not
are you
going to
gonna
wear
wear
them
your
around my
children's
neck.
teeth?
Maybe a
on your-
baby
No.
tooth necklace.
No, maybe I'll
This
give them
is-
to their future spouses.
that's so
I'm trying to
That's
imagine
amazing.
if Shell's parents had come to me and presented me like, here's this dowry of our daughter's baby teeth.
You know where it comes from is in my family, there's a gag gift that
That's
goes
true,
around,
yeah.
and that's where it comes from. So my
Okay.
brother, one of my brothers, had his wisdom teeth extracted, and they were particularly gnarly.
Yeah.
So they resurface every year in the form of a Christmas present.
Gotcha.
So maybe there's just something with teeth in the Gentry genes.
Uh-huh.
Because Ian was given the wisdom teeth last year.
He was perplexed by that.
And they currently reside in his desk, and they
Yes.
are something.
They're gross.
Yeah.
This
I'm
is
okay to
dark.
kill that tradition.
Yeah.
We may just
let it go.
throw your brother's teeth away
Yeah.
today.
Oh,
after.
don't tell Wes. Wes, I won't let him.
Wes
throw
will
them
be
away.
fine. Wes will be just fine.
All right, let's get into the previously previewed controversial book for today, and I will just give the title and the author and let Dave give a summary. So the book we're talking about today. So this season we're tackling popular marriage books from sort of both sides of a spectrum. Popular Christian marriage books from a Christian perspective, and popular secular marriage books. So this one is the first one we've done that's kind of a very popular secular marriage book from a very popular current voice in sort of the psychological world.
Wait, this one was secular?
So this one is called Mating. I love the title. Maybe one of the few things I love about it, but Mating in Captivity by Esther Perel.
So this book is fascinating. It is at parts incredibly insightful, and I think can be legitimately helpful for couples, which we'll get into in a second. It also carries within it, I think, the seed of marital death.
Gosh.
That if truly planted in a marriage, you can just put a timer on that divorce.
Ooh.
So it's a complex book. In fact, one of sort of her the thing she really goes for in this book is this concept of duality, which is sort of kind of contradictory kind of ideologies and messages that sort of work together, and you kind of need to have both of them, which kind of at Fellowship, we kind of talk about the theology of the end a little bit within a kind of a Christian framework. So there's something about what she's saying that is really good and I think can be helpful, but it's paired actually with something that I think could be really I know for a fact
Would be.
Yeah.
would be devastating.
Can you back up just a little bit and give a snapshot of it? Just a quick synopsis so people know kind of the big picture.
Okay, what she's trying to do in this book is crack the codes of attraction
Within marriage.
within marriage, but in order
Long-term relationships.
Long-term,
not
yeah,
necessarily marriage,
for sure.
yeah. So because she's coming from a non-Christian background, a non-Christian worldview, sort of thoroughgoingly non-Christian. Some authors, some marriage therapists sort of adopt a Judeo-Christian kind of framework, even if they don't like name it. She doesn't. And so it's a really good example of kind of a classically secular kind of perspective on marriage. So therefore, the theology that Christians have behind marriage and fidelity and honesty, some of the things that we get from the teaching of Jesus explicitly, she's not bound by that. And instead, she has other sort of philosophical assumptions she brings to the table. So, but what she's trying to do in this book is, I think, a really helpful thing for married couples and long-term committed relationships is to spice them up sexually. So she's observing in her long practice of, she's a marriage and sex therapist. In her long practice, she's observed this dynamic where couples, in order to have safety and security in their relationship, the cost of that safety, security is excitement and sexual zeal. And it's one or the other. So couples come to her, and inevitably their main issue is,
we lost the spark.
Yeah, we love each other. I'm really committed to our marriage. I love him. I love her. And I don't want to divorce. I don't want to separate, but there's no longer any sexual zeal. And so, and inevitably there's been an affair or pornography use or some sort of sexual kind of infidelity that sort of sparked the crisis in their relationship to bring the couple to Esther Perel as their therapist. So that's sort of...
So she's trying to forge a path forward for couples to somehow retain both.
To try to crack the code and unravel the mystery of, is it possible to maintain a safe domestic relationship with a spouse while also having that not just romantic, but sort of exotic, erotic, sort of super zealous sexual relationship. Now, if you remember the last book we reviewed, Gregoire, she differentiated between sex and intimacy. And she said sometimes you have sex, but you don't necessarily have intimacy. And when you have intimacy, it actually increases the percentages to have good sex, especially for the wife. What Esther does, in contrast, is she actually differentiates between sex and eroticism. And she says, well, a lot of these couples are having sex, but really what they want is hot sex. Mm-hmm. And they want it kinky, and they want it sort of in a way that really raises sort of the temperature.
Like mind-blowing kind of.
Yes. So the kind of sex that is attached to affairs and sort of forbidden fruit and fantasy and the stuff you're not supposed to do. Mm-hmm. So she separates eroticism, which is that, from sort of quote unquote normative sex within a
committed
healthy marriage relationship. So it's interesting because they wanted, our last book and this book wants to differentiate sex from the thing that they're going after. Mm-hmm. It's just the thing that she's going after in this book is this idea of eroticism, which she thinks is really necessary to fulfill sort of your human vocation, that it's sort of baked into the human experience, which she's sort of right and sort of wrong on, I think, but that's sort of her framework. So what she wants to do for couples is to try to kind of loosen them up and sort of disentangle them from their sometimes religious or cultural sort of restraints that have prevented them from experiencing the erotic within a married relationship. Now, something that I think she does that's super helpful is just make sort of clear that a lot of times in long-term married relationships, especially once you begin to have children, within the Western culture, once a woman has a child, it's mom. And mom is, within Western world, is somehow less of a sexual being than what she was before having a kid.
To her partner, or just to society in general?
To the partner. So she's dealing with it sort of at a individual basis, but she's making an observation. She's sort of cross-cultural. She's born in
Right.
Belgium, raised in Israel, and then did graduate school in America.
yeah.
She's polyglot, speaks like 8 different languages. She's a fascinating character. And she's just observing that in other cultures, like Latin cultures, that being a mom doesn't mean that you exchange your sexuality. But in sort of the culture that where most of our listeners are from, and that we're from, there is kind of this exchange. Well, now you're a mother, and therefore sex and your sexuality kind of, if not goes on the shelf, it becomes so de-emphasized that it's no longer a primary part of your relationship with your spouse anymore. And that's where they get into problems. Now, I will say that as a pastoral counselor, I see the same thing. And so I think the problem she's observing, I see that as well. I see that in tons of couples, and there's a practical reality to it. Once you do have kids, there's the discomfort of actually having the children. She actually talks about childbirth, and that she's like, Western white people aren't so they're not allowed to say what a sort of the word she uses is gross, like how the actual having of the child, it's bloody, and where the child comes out of, how that sort of imprints in the wife and the husband, imprints in there something that's traumatic, and therefore impacts their capacity, want to, of having sex again, and in a regular normative way. So, and that does happen. So, I think her diagnosis is spot on.
I also thought it was good when she framed up how in Western society now our marriage or long-term partnership has to fulfill so many roles.
Yes.
So, 100 years ago, you had family and you had extended community connections, extended friendships. So your spouse didn't have to be your lover, your best friend, your counselor, your co-laborer around the house. Like we have gotten to the point where we expect, and that can be an intimacy or eroticism killer.
Yes.
When this person has to be every single role to you.
Yes.
That's the expectation.
Yeah.
And this is where I think there is actually some, however slim, some overlap with her and with this book specifically and her diagnosis and what, Keller talks about this in Meaning of Marriage.
I was thinking the exact same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that the diagnosis of your spouse has to fulfill some divine role in your life.
Yeah.
She uses that language.
Yep.
And she's like that sort of can kill the vibe. She talks about couples who they've learned that when they go out on a date, they make sure that whoever they go on a date and kids are at home, that they'd learned that when the husband, I think in this scenario, saw the wife pay the babysitter, all of like the sexual tension that was built up over the date was lost, because now it's like, oh, you're my domestic partner and we're having to do childcare together, and it's like, now I just want to watch Netflix with you and go to sleep. And so this particular couple is like, no, I'm going to go straight to the bedroom. You deal with, I'm not even going to see you interact with the babysitter. And so the next time I see you, it's just going to be in the bedroom, and we can kind of sort of cut off that.
Pretend we don't have kids.
Yeah, which she talks a ton about fantasy and sort of indulging that part. So it's the diagnosis in terms of what the difficulties couples face. She's dealing with real couples, and I think that diagnosis is true. But that isn't the best thing that she does. I think the one solution she has would be helpful for everyone. And that is...
Can I ask you something before you...
Yes.
Even the premise, I don't know if I fully buy into her premise. That... Because it's, it almost seems like, you you see these Hollywood relationships and it's supposed to look a certain way. So even her expectation of this mind-blowing eroticism ever present in a relationship, is that like, it seems like a pipe dream kind of. Like even that expectation, is that even a fair and possible expectation within a long-term relationship?
Well, she would say yes and no. She would say physiologically, no, it's not a fair expectation. She goes into sort of the brain chemistry, that sort of what goes on in a mind sort of at the beginning of a sexual relationship, and all of like the mystery and
Risk.
the unknown and risk, all of that, that it's kind of like a drug and it has sort of diminishing impacts on you. So it isn't reasonable to have that expectation that it's sort of like the first time all the time, you know, with that same kind of heart palpitation type excitement. But she does say that if you jointly decide, let's work on our sex life and make this enjoyable for both of us, it can be fostered. You can, if you decide this is going to be a value, then you can work together in trying to create an environment where your sexuality can be expressed and appreciated, and that I think is reasonable. But so does that answer your question? I mean, I do think how she differentiates, maybe this is the question, how she differentiates between, like, I think would be healthy, normal sex from eroticism, and to think that eroticism is going to be a part of your marriage. I think there are some things that she describes in that are out of bounds for a long-term healthy marriage within a Christian framework.
Yeah, we'll get to. Yeah, I'm just thinking, it seems like this category, like in our marriage, there are times it's like, that was great.
Yeah.
And it seems like this is even a different category than that.
Yeah.
To where, I don't know. I just don't know if it feels like something people are trying to attain that doesn't even really exist.
Yeah. I mean, the only time she gets really into the details of what she's describing is in the last half of the book, where it becomes pornographic.
Right.
Out of bounds of what I think would be
for long-term flourishing in a relationship.
Show dignity to each other as image bearers.
Right.
But with that said, I think being honest about one's sexuality and wanting to express that within the confines of a safe relationship, and placing value on it and giving some effort towards it, I think
it's valuable.
Yeah, I think it's valuable to that extent. She thinks that Americans have inherited sort of two extremes with sex. On the one hand, there's sort of our Puritan background. In the Christian world, we talk a ton about sort of purity culture and all that. She doesn't get into that. She isn't terribly familiar with that. But sort of almost to the right of that is this puritanical purity culture from our literal Puritan heritage, where sex is essentially, only for reproductive purposes, and there's no joy. I mean, she totally sort of she stereotypes Puritans in the process, but still that's sort of her framework. So that's all the way to the right. And then all the way to the left, she calls it hedonism. She talks about sort of the hookup culture and college campuses, and you only have sex with people who you don't know. And if once you get to know them, then...
And it's just for pleasure.
It's just for pleasure and totally selfish. And you use it for you and without any regard as to your sexual partner. So she's wanting to sort of establish those as like the extremes on both ends, and she wants couples to kind of find some happy medium in there. So that's kind of some basic framework of the book. What does she say that's good? that I think our listeners could really sort of benefit from. Here's the thing. She says that we have assumed, and when she says we, she means the counseling psychological community and marriage therapists in particular.
In a Western context.
In a Western context. That communication, that is, we tell each other everything all the time, and verbal communication and constant sort of connection and self-revelation of who I am to you all the time, that would actually produce sexual desire and pursuit of each other.
But it diminishes it instead.
What she is observing is that it actually takes away mystery. If you feel like you already know someone wholly and completely, then there's nothing more to know. And therefore, that sort of primitive kind of pursuit, cat and mouse, hide and seek, that is a part of the heartbeat of romance, that diminishes as a result. And so she's saying that a lot of couples in the American context, they're told if all they have to do is communicate better, communicate more, then that somehow will fuel romance. And she is observing that isn't true.
You know what this made me think of? I'm going to refer to an old movie. This is going to date us. But do you know what I'm thinking of?
I think so, but...
So every Christmas we make the boys watch It's a Wonderful Life. And the Jimmy Stewart character is pursuing the... I can't remember her name in the... What's her name?
I don't know.
You're asking the wrong person.
Okay, sorry.
Okay, yeah.
This is not my film.
And the girl, who I can't remember her actress name, but so they have an unfortunate incident with a pool at a dance, and she's in a robe, and he's in like funny football clothes or whatever, and they're kind of having this interaction on the sidewalk, and this man is sitting on the balcony of one of the houses, and he screams at him, "Why don't you kiss her instead of just talking her to death?" And he was like, "What?" And he's like, "Just kiss her instead of talking her to death." And I kept thinking of that hearkening back to the 1920s.
Yes.
I mean, that's sort of what she's trying to say.
It is. And
Donna Reed's the character.
There you go.
That's that Renee Moreland brain. It downloaded.
Downloaded.
It's always in there. Yes. And if you feel like you have to tell your spouse everything all the time, rather than having some measure of discretion, then it takes away some of the natural allure. And she uses language of otherness that at times sounds biblical. It takes away some of the otherness of who you are. If I already know everything there is to know about you, then it becomes naturally enmeshed into me. And once it becomes kind of enmeshed into me, then I lose that distinct sort of you.
So she's advocating a bit to sacrifice a little relational intimacy for sexual intimacy or for sexual passion.
Yes, I think so. I think she would say that. Or it's a balance.
It's a dance.
It's a dance. They're contradictory energies.
Right.
So safety, security, knowledge. She would say honesty is on one hand, and then mystery, excitement, danger on the other hand. That if you want to have a vibrant sex life, you can't let go of one without letting go of the other. And so I think there is something to what she's saying. And I think that because we actually see this biblically in the one complete book of the Bible that talks about marriage and sex entirely, which is the Song of Songs. What is it? It is the interaction between
pursuit,
a lover and a beloved playing hide and go seek. revealing, hiding, revealing, hiding, playing a bit of a game. And yet, as you read it, there's this tension and this beauty and romance, that's in it. And that's in the Bible. And that's like the example of romance we see in the Bible is that. There's also this awesome proverb at the very end of Proverbs where the writer is observing natural phenomenon as great mysteries to be enjoyed and to be marveled at. And he says there are something like there are three things that are too wonderful for me, four that I cannot understand. And then the last one he mentions is a young man with a maiden, with a virgin. Some translations, right before that he said a ship on the high seas. So if you think of a ship, how it just sort of bounces up and down the high seas, and the relationship between the ship and the waves, and how it interacts back and forth, how there is this dynamic there that is beautiful to watch, but there is an unpredictability to it that increases the excitement and the beauty of it. He goes from that right into the romantic relationship between a man and his lover, and he says there's something marvelous and beautiful and mysterious about how they interact. And then he moves on to other things. And I think what she's doing is wanting to highlight that mystery that is a part of romance, that we as Christians know this is a part of what God would want for us in marriage.
Yeah, but doesn't it seems like it's a young person's interplay. And even the Song of Solomon, they're really young.
Yeah, and so is the couple mentioned in Proverbs.
So it does seem like, do you recreate that in a stable, mature relationship? It almost seems tawdry a little bit. Just
right, and I think she would say that's okay.
Right.
I mean, what she would say, and this steps outside.
But it almost feels like, when you see someone who's older and is really trying to dress young, in some ways there's like a patheticness about it.
Yeah.
Because it's like, no, enjoy where you are.
Yeah.
Enjoy that you don't have to dress like you're 20 because you're 55.
Right.
Like there's a part of it that hits like that with me. It's like, do we really have to, okay, let's go back and pretend.
Yeah.
So we can, because I think there's depth and real great sex that might look a little different than when you're playing hide and seek and you're 20. And I don't know if it's worse. It might be different, but I don't know if you want to be like, we need to get back there.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm thinking out loud.
I think you're onto something, and she doesn't. This is where I think we would disagree with her, because like the framework that we've used before, and I think she's a bit of an outside when she gets into the expectation of eroticism. She's an outsider within even the psychological community,
Right.
That she's out like she's a bit of an outsider,
Right. But you think back, like when we first met, I mean, you kiss forever, right? Like you could make out forever.
Yes.
And I don't know if I want to have to do that again.
Right. And it's like this.
Right?
Well, think of
Like it was super steamy and erotic or whatever, but I'm kind of glad we're in a different place where we've matured past.
To me it's the difference between, drinking a Mountain Dew and drinking a perfectly aged bottle of wine.
Maybe do wine cooler.
A wine cooler. Yeah.
A wine cooler and a perfectly
Azima.
aged Azima.
And
We're
like
aging
the
ourselves
kind
so
of
much in this podcast.
you're on your taste buds.
Zima, which hasn't been around
There's
for
an
like 20 years.
Yeah, there's an imagery, there's a maturity of your taste buds that, the wine cooler, the super sweet thing, can appreciate it almost instantly.
Right. Right.
And it's great, and it tastes great. But then now, after years and years and years, when we pour like a perfectly aged bottle of Pinot Noir, a perfect cab or whatever, we have one that's been aging for a while in our house that's rated a 99.
I keep trying to.
I know, you
I'm always
cannot,
like, hey,
if you open that.
I'm always like, can we have that tonight? And he's like, no, we have to wait.
Yeah. But when we drink that, there is such depth and beauty to it. We're not guzzling it.
Right. Right.
And I don't think she has that framework
Yeah.
with sex.
Yeah.
And this is what I was going to say, and this is like you perfectly teed it up, because not only is your taste more discerning, like you can actually understand the depth and the complexity of what you're experiencing, right? And that aging process, because I'm kind of with you, Renee. I think that there is some degree to where if you're if all you're doing is almost compulsively chasing this mystery and this unknown, and like I want to have the same sex that I had in my 20s, my early 20s, in my 50s, the difference is there's, and she actually gets into this a little bit in the book, there's very little that you're going to discover about your sexuality in your 50s. Like if you actually have a full sexual history up until that point, you are probably keenly aware of what works and what doesn't.
Yes.
And when you're 23, you don't have that. You're still figuring all of that out. And what stood out to me in when you were talking about that, Renee, is that there is a level of, it's not that the mystery is gone. It's that you have a deeper understanding of yourself and your partner, and you know exactly what works and what doesn't.
Yeah.
And you know exactly your needs and their needs, and you can lean into that more instead of this whimsical, we'll just figure it out. And what doesn't get touched on is in those moments, there's a whole lot of disappointment and sexual frustration early on where you're like, my partner's clearly super into this and I am not, right? And so that's gone.
Yeah.
Like
I just
30
think
years into
you're
it.
gonna miss,
Yeah.
like Jesse said, you're just gonna miss a lot of good stuff along the way. If you're chasing this carrot, you're just gonna miss a lot of sweet moments, and like, I don't know, it just seems like that it's a fool's errand.
And I think that's the primary criticism of this book is, even beyond it being obviously unbiblical and out of the bounds of sort of the Christian vision of marriage.
Especially with her prescription.
Yeah, which
Right.
we can touch on.
Yeah.
But the primary criticism is that it doesn't work. It like every
What doesn't work? That what she's advocating doesn't
what
work?
she's advocating
Right.
for.
Right.
If
all
quote-
peer reviewed resources say this doesn't work.
if success is remaining married in a meaningful relationship long term, almost all of her couples that she gives as examples end not with and they remained happily married.
Lived happily ever after.
No, they didn't quite know what to do next, and they were kind of uncertain as to what their future held. But they now sort of took ownership of their own sexuality, and that's the win for her. The win isn't actually a long-term, sustaining covenant relationship. That's not her win. The win is have these individuals unlocked and taken ownership of their
But I think
sexual
that's
identity.
society's value.
It is.
I don't think
Yeah.
I don't think our society necessarily has the same win that you would have.
No. But I'm just saying that's what her
Yeah.
Yeah.
what her win is.
Yeah.
And so in terms of whether or not this is ultimately helpful, I would say no, because while insightful at points,
Yeah. Yep.
and really helpful, I think taken collectively, does this actually help your marriage get stronger? long term, I don't think so. I think it might short term spice things up.
Mm-hmm.
Long term, I don't know what it would do. I don't think it would work, principally because the suggestions she gives and things she wants couples to try out.
Why don't you hit on a few? And
Okay,
we won't camp there very long.
Yeah. So I mean, here's the thing. She's pro pornography.
Mm-hmm.
Nowhere in the book does she mentions the devastating effect
Yeah,
of pornography in not just in marriages but
From
in
society.
the porn industry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And human trafficking.
Yeah.
She never mentions it once. It's
Right.
shocking.
Right.
She just is like, well, this is just sort of an expression of human sexuality.
It's a tool, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and nowhere does she mention that. So her endorsement essentially of pornography was really troubling.
I think as a woman psychotherapist too, that seems odd to me.
It was bizarre. It felt
Like a blind spot.
yeah. And then she is open to the possibility of open marriages. She endorses this idea of emotionally monogamous, sexually promiscuous. That won't work.
Having walked with friends through that who are not believers, who met like at a music festival, were like, hey, you're hot, I'm hot, let's do this thing. Like the whole thing started like carnal. And then they decided to get married for the tax benefits and, whatever. And maintain an open marriage throughout their entire marriage until, again, shocker, even without like a biblical sex ethic, even without an understanding of covenant and the deeper meaning of marriage, what they realize is like, oh, this isn't sustainable. This doesn't work because I'm still super jealous.
Yeah.
And it's always like, it always works better for one person than the other.
Right.
And their marriage dissolved because of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And she mentions in the book that most of her colleagues disagree with her on this. She had a colleague who said like, hey, we tried this in the 70s
Yeah.
and it
Yeah.
didn't work. But she's like, well, who's to say classic fidelity in marriage that's working either? And plenty of people who are for fidelity in marriage get divorced. So why not try this? So it's a very sort of almost kind of a nihilism that's kind of driving it. So it's her solution objectively doesn't work. And then it kind of justifies a kind of selfishness that is super problematic in marriage.
Yeah.
And then she talks about healthy objectification of the other too, which is language that I hate. And she thinks that objectification is necessary for the erotic. There's just a whole litany of red flags throughout that line of thinking that I think is I would assume she would be an outsider within that particular field on those topics. But practically, I don't think they would work or produce the kind of intimacy that people are actually longing for.
Right.
It's scratching an itch that then becomes the itch takes it never satisfies.
Yeah.
We know how addiction works, right? And you called it the carrot, like it becomes that. So
Don't you think undergirding her whole philosophy is, I mean, we're at a point in society where there's no commitment to a whole. There's no commitment to anything. The individual preferences and experiences so far outweigh any other commitment. It just skews it so far that way.
yeah, any value.
So what you feel and what you need is so much more important than your marriage as an entity.
Yeah. Remember when Keller said, marriage used to be about we.
Yeah.
And now it's about
Not me. Yeah. Yeah.
This book is about me.
On steroids.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
Well, and again, kind of flies in the face of what we understand in that the depth of the knowledge of the person often, and again, like she argues against this, she would call this intimacy being the death of eroticism, but experientially, the more you know a person, the more you see them thriving and excelling at their giftings. And like when I see my wife being awesome at something, my response is not
Propulsion.
yeah, it's not like, well, you're no longer sexually viable. It's like she's crushing it.
Yeah.
Let's go. You
Yeah.
know, like
Yeah.
there it should further those depths,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
drag you into even deeper waters. But
Okay, Dave,
Yeah.
do we want to tie a bow on and rank
Yeah.
this? Do you have
Yeah.
anything else you want to say?
Nothing else. I feel like, honestly, we've highlighted the good things in the book. So just,
Don't read it.
take those.
take your time, save your money.
Yeah.
I don't recommend this book.
Yeah, I don't
so
either.
It's a thumbs down for me
Yeah, me too.
for the reasons we've mentioned.
Yep.
Not that there isn't some value in it, but I think it's just the bad overwhelms.
There's
the
not
good.
300 pages of value in it.
No.
Right.
No.
Right. Yeah.
Sorry, Esther.
Yeah. Wah, wah.
All right.
Ba-dum-bum-bum.
So speaking of killing the mystery in our relationship, here we go. Let's
Okay.
do it.
Surprise question for you, Renee.
Okay.
Now, this year is Will's senior year. We have talked a lot about how difficult this is, transitioning to a future season of empty nesters, and most of that discussion from both of us really has been negative, in that it's just there's a lot of sorrow with that. But so my question for you though is, what are you excited about next year? Like, I want to ask you.
You're
so
trying to
Will's-
reframe my melancholy.
Yeah. I mean, Will's going to be in college next year. What are you excited about for next year? And just because our conversations have always been like the loss,
Right.
but I want to know, what's the gain? What's the possibility? What's the excitement?
Two things come to mind quickly. I think I'm excited about visiting wherever he is. That's still around him. But just expanding where our family's footprint to other parts of the country. I think that sounds fun. And I'm really excited for Ian. Ian is our middle child. And I think it's hard being a middle
Yeah.
of three of the same gender. And I'm excited for him to be the oldest, and sort of the confidence and responsibility and that comes with.
I think that kind of can create some room for him to grow in ways
Yeah.
that he hasn't
Yeah.
been able to
Yeah.
up to this point. Okay,
So
that's cool.
Yeah.
Great. That's something to be excited about. I hadn't thought about Ian. Sorry, Ian. No, I think about you all the time, buddy. But in that way, I hadn't thought about it.
His role in the family.
Cool. Thanks, son.
Yeah. Let's talk about how we can make our day better, each other's day better.
Renee, how can I make your day better?
So I'm going to hit Command C, Command V.
Okay.
From
on
last
on
week?
this one. So I'm just going to remind you of a previous,
Oh, no.
not previous, how can I make your day better? Not that you didn't do it, but that it was really helpful.
Okay.
So the things that are important but not urgent,
Yes.
to tick some of those off.
Okay.
Namely, our issue with our refrigerator.
Okay. All right. We can.
So
That's help.
whatever that we're kind of in a quandary with our refrigerator because it's leaking water every day, which is a bummer when you have hardwood floors.
We've tried all of
Yeah.
the solutions.
And the ice maker doesn't work. and we either need to fix it, which it's like the technician, 2 hours with the technician, you just bought a new fridge, or we need to get a replacement. So that would really, because I'm cleaning up. Like we have to literally go in and like crack up all this ice that's formed on the bottom and sweep it out.
Alleviate
the issues with the refrigerator
problems.
Yes.
That's fair enough. I can make your day better with that.
That would make my day better.
Okay, that's clear.
All right. How can I make your day better?
Tonight, we there's a couple coming over for counseling to our house, and I know things aren't perfect in the household.
Wait, what do you mean?
Like it's, I don't know if our house, it actually is pretty clean, but
I did a lot of tidying this morning.
did you? So you've already gotten it ready. But
I may have preemptively fulfilled your.
Often we have people come over. We've talked about this before. There is sort of heightened anxiety in our relationship that everything is perfect. And I just know that tonight.
How you frame that, we have very different expectations of perfect.
Right.
So I just sort of expect no underwear on the floor.
Okay.
Urine wiped away from the toilet seat. That doesn't feel like perfection to me. That feels like basic sanity when having guests. Okay.
Fair enough.
We digress.
Okay. But I'm cooking tonight.
Right.
Gourmet hot dogs.
That's good. Is that okay? Yeah, cooking. Okay.
But I'm on. So it's just going to be a turnaround.
Right.
Where we go home, I'm cooking, and then we have a couple coming over for counseling like an hour after dinner. And that often is sort of a troubling scenario.
Right.
And so
do you want me to own the get the house ready?
Well, what would make my day better is just that we have made a pre-agreement that regardless of
I'm not cranky.
Yes. So that regardless of how it plays out, relationally, you love, you're feeling me. You're feeling it.
Okay.
That if I know, like, hey, I'm not going to make a wrong move and Renee's going to be mad at me. If I know that's not in the scenario, I go into this evening with a lot of excitement and looking forward to good stuff.
Okay.
Less foreboding.
Yes.
Okay. I can do that.
Okay, great.
All right. Last thing. What we're liking right now. You go first and I'll.
Renee, what? Oh, want me to go first?
Yeah, go first.
Okay.
Go
So
first.
what am I into right now? Oh my gosh, guys. You have no idea how good zucchini bread is. And the zucchini bread in my house, literally, like it was a spiritual.
It took a while for me to find this recipe.
It was like
I found it.
It was a borderline spiritual experience. I was eating it so slowly, and I always put just a little layer of butter on top of it too, and it had melted, and it was
transcendent.
It was I had it right in the middle of my bed. Didn't let anyone touch it, and people were talking all around me, and it was just me and the zucchini bread.
Charlie Brown voices around you.
Oh my gosh, I'll never be the same.
Just wait till he discovers like zucchini dark chocolate brownies.
Yeah, I know.
What I had last night was transcendent and amazing, and that's what I'm into right now. And will be
manna from heaven.
Yes,
zucchini manna from heaven.
Well, it's good because piggybacking on what you're into, what I'm into is my garden and not wasting one vegetable or spice or
it's impressive.
And we have quite the yield right now.
Yeah.
So I was going to say, I was at your house like 2 weeks ago and I walked by on the way out and I was like, yes.
Yeah. So we picked 55 tomatoes. And it is like, it's a challenge because they're organic. We know where they came from. We worked hard to get them. So there's likely going to be a lot of zucchini bread coming your way. I'm into utilizing. Sometimes I was talking to a friend and they're like, it's like you grew up in in World War II or something. You know how they talk about you can't waste anything.
Yeah.
They're like, you just can't waste any. I'm like, I know. It's like I grew up in the Depression.
Yeah, I feel that. There were days early, especially with having 2 kiddos, where if I ate, it was because I was shoveling cold leftovers
So they
into
wouldn't go
my
to waste.
face over the sink because I didn't want to throw away the macaroni and cheese. I'm like, this
99-cent box
yeah,
mac
it's like
and cheese.
55-cent box of mac and cheese, and yet I'm eating like a raccoon over the sink. Like, where does this come from?
We have our previous life. We were products of the Depression.
Yeah.
Okay, Jesse, what are you into?
All right. I spent last episode in the intro trying to talk Dave out of talking up my band, but I'm going to turn around and I'm going
Turn it around.
and I'm going to say the thing I'm into right now is the cool stuff that's happening with my band. And that's really exciting, and I never talk about this.
Plug it. What's the
So
name?
I'm
What's the
gonna
name?
plug it. The band is called A Place for Owls.
Will wore your t-shirt to school today.
Well, we have a t-shirt that is, we call it Existential Goose, and it's a goose smoking a cigarette while riding a penny board, thinking, "Do I feel at home here?" Which is the name of one of our songs. There's an added foil of humor there, and it's a Canada goose, which is an invasive species. So it's the invasive species is asking, "Do I feel at home here?" Anyway, but the cool stuff that's happening is we have our if you were hearing this the day it came out, you're about a week and a half away from us dropping our debut full-length album. It's super exciting. They are songs we love, and we've been strategically leaking the album to people that people whose opinions and musical taste we value, and with very little expectation. You know, you create art and you think, well, this is meaningful to me, and hopefully other people like it, but if that's as far as it goes, that I made something that feels valuable, and that's good enough. People are saying nice things.
Yeah.
People are saying really nice things.
So where can the people
and
find it?
unprompted,
Can we go to Spotify
so
and
right
search A Place
now-
for Owls and it'll pop up?
Yeah. As of a couple days ago, there should be 3 singles available. All are available on Spotify, Apple Music, wherever you get music.
Okay.
We are also for those of you here in Denver, the whole month of August 2022, we are a featured local artist on Indie 102.3.
Awesome.
So you can hear us on the radio.
Awesome.
Which is neat. We have a CD release show, an album release show on September 2nd at Globe Hall. That's a Friday night. Get a babysitter. Come hear some awesome live music. That's
Jesse,
it.
that's so exciting.
That's
That's
exciting.
it. That's as far as I can go with pumping my own brand.
Love it.
Cool. Well, hey, everyone. Thanks for listening. And if you have any feedback for us, thoughts, suggestions, maybe you know of the perfect marriage book that we should review, send it our way.
Yep.
We'd love to take a look at it. Dave at fellowshipdenver.org.
Renee at fellowshipdenver.org.
Jesse at fellowshipdenver.org.
Bye.
Have a good day. Bye.